Everyone, my name is Shobna Menon and this shall be the second lecture that I shall be providing on the subject Basics of Indian Polity. Now last time I had touched upon the definitions of politics, polity, what gives life to the polity, what is a constitution, how does it function, why do we need it, and what are the three basic organs of state mentioned in the constitution, right? And of course, I had left the lecture briefly describing the functions of these organs. The legislature is a lawmaking body, the executive implements the laws, and the judiciary validates these laws. That is, if any of these laws are in contravention to the constitution, if it violates the principles of the constitution, the judiciary invalidates these laws. They strike down such laws and they are no longer applicable on anyone or on any territory. Right? So, let us have a brief overview of each of these organs. Starting with the Indian legislature. What does the Indian legislature comprise of? Please bear in mind that the Indian legislature comprises of parliament at the union level and state legislatures at the state level. Most of the people, while describing Indian legislature, only think of the parliament and skip the state legislature. But the Indian legislature is equal to the parliament at the center and state legislatures at the state level. So you have to describe the state legislatures as well. So let us have a look at the parliament. What does the parliament comprise of? Again, most of the people get this question wrong. Right? Parliament comprises of the President of India, the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. Most of the people just end up saying Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. They forget to include the President of India. That is false. The Parliament comprises of the President of India, the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. Now, of course, an inevitable question may be posed. What does the President of India have to do with the lawmaking process? Of course, apart from summoning the first session of the Lok Sabha and addressing the newly elected government, the President has a very important duty. You may be aware of the fact that the bills that are passed by the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha together can only and only become a law with the assent of the President. That is, without his signature, a bill can never become a law. So, in this way, the President is a part of the lawmaking process and hence a part of the Parliament. Now, let's have a look at the Lok Sabha. Okay, Lok Sabha, from the name itself, we can discern that Lok Sabha is House of the People. So, Lok Sabha represents the people, Rajya Sabha on the other hand represents the states, Rajyo ka Sabha. So, Rajya Sabha represents the states, Lok Sabha represents the people. Please bear in mind this most essential difference between the two houses. Now, moving on to the tenure of the Lok Sabha. The tenure of the Lok Sabha is of 5 years. The tenure of the Lok Sabha is 5 years. Of course, the house can be dissolved before its tenure. It has happened so many times in the history. So, you are well aware of the fact that a government can fall well before its tenure. But, what is the tenure of a Rajya Sabha members? Please remember, the tenure of a Rajya Sabha member is that of 6 years with 1/3 of the members of Rajya Sabha retiring every 2 years. 1/3 of the Rajya Sabha members retire every 2 years. This means that the Rajya Sabha is a permanent body. It can never be dissolved. So, Lok Sabha can be dissolved, Rajya Sabha cannot be dissolved. The tenure of a Lok Sabha is 5 years. The tenure of a Rajya Sabha member is 6 years with 1/3 members retiring every 2 years. Okay, is that clear? Moving on, let's discuss the strengths. The strengths of a Lok Sabha, well, it can be divided into the maximum strength and the current strength. Now, the maximum strength, what is the maximum capacity? How many seats, total seats are there in Lok Sabha? 552. Remember these figures, my dear friends. The maximum strength of Lok Sabha is 552. Whereas the maximum strength of Rajya Sabha, what are the total number of seats provided for in the Rajya Sabha? 250. Right? So the maximum strength in Rajya Sabha is 250 while that of in Lok Sabha is 552. Now what is the current strength? The current strength in Lok Sabha is 545. The current strength in Lok Sabha is 545 while that in Rajya Sabha is 245. Okay, so once you are able to remember these figures, it's not very complicated. Let's move on to the nominations. Now you may well be aware of the fact that in each house there are elected members and then there are nominated members. In Lok Sabha, out of 545 members, 2 are nominated. That is, 543 are elected and 2 are nominated. Who nominates them? The President of India. And who are these people? The Anglo-Indians. So, the Anglo-Indians are nominated in the Lok Sabha. How many? 2. Moving on to the Rajya Sabha. How many are nominated? 12. That means 233 are elected and 12 are nominated. Right? And who nominates them? Again, the President of India. Across which fields? Arts, literature, science and social service. Arts, science, literature and social service are the 4 fields across which these 12 members are nominated. And in Lok Sabha, 2 members are nominated and they are Anglo-Indians. So, if I were to ask you a question that how many members does the President of India nominate in the Parliament, then what should be your answer? If you're going to give me an answer saying 2 or 12, you're wrong. The total numbers are 14, right? So when I mentioned the word Parliament, if I had specifically mentioned Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, then of course the answer would have been valid. But how many members does the President nominate in the Parliament? The total answer is 14. The correct answer is 14, right? So after establishing that, let us move on to the state legislature. Oh, by the way, the eligibility conditions of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha MP are almost the same with slight variations. Both have to be the citizen of India, but age-wise, to be a Lok Sabha MP, you have to be above 25 years of age, and to be a Rajya Sabha MP, you have to be above 30 years of age. It is actually one of the reasons why Rajya Sabha is called the House of Elders. It is called the House of Elders. Why? So as to keep a check on any errors that are made by the Lok Sabha while making or passing a bill. So Rajya Sabha is considered to be a house that are filled with mature people. Of course, that is questionable, but that is the idea of the existence of Rajya Sabha, to check any errors made on the part of Lok Sabha. Okay, so moving on to the state legislature. Just as the Parliament comprises of the President of India, the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha, similarly, the state legislature comprises of the governor, the Vidhan Sabha and the Vidhan Parishad. Vidhan Sabha is called Legislative Assembly, Vidhan Parishad is called Legislative Council. Vidhan Sabha is the lower house, Vidhan Parishad is the upper house. You can say almost equate Vidhan Sabha with Lok Sabha at the center and Vidhan Parishad with the Rajya Sabha at the center, right? So these components form the state legislature, but please bear in mind that out of 29 states, only 7 states have Vidhan Parishad, that is an upper house. That is, 22 states do not have an upper house. Maharashtra has a Vidhan Parishad, Gujarat only has the governor and Vidhan Sabha as its state legislature. So the figures may vary, the state legislature components may vary from state to state, right? So please bear that in mind. Now moving on to the Union Executive. What does the Union Executive comprise of? The Union Executive comprises of the President, the Vice President and the Prime Minister and his Council of Ministers. Just briefly describing them, the eligibility to be a President of India is that you have to be a citizen of India and you should be above 35 years of age and you should be qualified to run a Lok Sabha election. Now, if you need to be a Vice President of India, what is the eligibility? Again, you have to be a citizen of India, you have to be more than 35 years of age and you have to qualify to run a Rajya Sabha election. And then of course there is the Prime Minister and his own Council of Ministers, which we will describe later on. So that is the Union Executive for you, the President, the Vice President and the Prime Minister and his Council of Ministers. Moving on to the Indian Judiciary. The Indian Judiciary is unified and comprises of the Supreme Court at the apex level. At the topmost level we have the Supreme Court, right? Followed by the High Courts. How many High Courts do we have in our country? 24. We have 24 High Courts in our country, followed by the District Courts. And then of course there are subordinate courts under the District Courts. You may have heard of tribunals. We've got administrative tribunals, appellate tribunals, debt recovery tribunal. These are some of the examples of tribunals. Then of course we've got Nyaya Panchayat, we've got Lok Adalats. Okay, so these are some of the examples of subordinate courts that fall under the District Courts. Right, so that's the Indian Judiciary for you. So to recap, we just discussed the 3 organs of the state. The Indian legislature, please do not forget, comprises of the Parliament at the union level and the state legislature at the state level. The parliament comprises of the President of India, the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha, and the state legislature comprises of the governor, the Vidhan Parishad, which is the upper house, legislative council, and the Vidhan Sabha, the lower house or the legislative assembly. Then of course we talked about the union executive, which comprises of the President of India, Vice President of India, and the Prime Minister and his Council of Ministers. And then of course the Indian judiciary, which comprises of the Supreme Court, High Court and district courts, followed by the subordinate courts. More on this on the next lecture. Thank you.